What's up everyone? In today's video, I'm going to show you some bootleg style t-shirts and break down what fonts are used and what effects are used so that you can do it yourself inside Photoshop. Let's go. What's up everyone? So in today's video, I'm basically going to show you guys a bunch of examples of authentic bootleg style rap t-shirts and sort of break down the text component of each graphic and tell you guys what font is used and sort of show you how you can get a similar effect inside Photoshop. I'm going to do it all live. I have a bunch of examples ready to go and we're just going to go through them one by one, and I'm going to do my best to recreate what's going on in the original graphics. So without further ado, let's go. So I've got this first example ready. This is a Master P bootleg shirt. It says Ice Cream Man. Pretty dope, pretty classic, you know, bootleg style shirt. So the font here on the left side and this little P in the lower right corner is Army. If you watched my Snoop Dogg bootleg video, which I'm assuming you did because it fucking kind of blew up on me, and now I'm like the bootleg guy, which I'm down to be. Like, I really appreciate you guys, and it really helped me out and kind of told me like who my audience was, so that was dope. Anyways, I used the Army font in that example, so you guys might already know about it, but I want to show you how they did like this sort of bubble pattern and like the shadow inlay and all this stuff. So let's jump right into it. So first thing I'm going to do is just write master here, and if you hold down the shift key, you can rotate text 15 degrees at a time, so it's kind of useful if you're just trying to go 90 degrees. So okay, let's make that as big as the example. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a pattern on here. You will want to like go on Google and just search like seamless patterns. This is actually an old Photoshop pattern that I just turned gray so that we could mess around with the color a little bit easier. It's not exactly what's used here. It's, but it's similar-ish. It's kind of hard to tell exactly what they used. It could be this, but it looks a little different. But what you'll want to do is just go on Google and like search seamless patterns. You can search like seamless rock pattern, seamless lava pattern, seamless water pattern. Like the actual patterns inside of the text, they don't matter a ton. They're basically just, in this case, it's just kind of like what was available at the time, in I'm assuming Photoshop or whatever software they used. But you kind of want to lean towards something that's a little bit like cheesy in nature, like that's gonna sort of add to the bootleg style effect. So anyways, I've got this pattern in here. I scaled it up to 400%. You always want to stay at like 100, 200, 300, 400, etc. percent. Don't get into like you lose like resolution for some reason if you get into like odd numbers like this or like in between numbers, so I would just stick to basically multiples of 100. So let's go to 400 on this one. Maybe even go to 500. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, let's do 500 because the example is a little bit bigger. So okay, then I'm gonna throw a color layer over it. I was already messing around with this before the video just to make sure everything was gonna look cool. So I used a color overlay with blend mode on multiply and basically just grabbed a color from inside here and just messed around until I kind of had it to where it's looking similar to the example. So that's not bad. I'm basically just looking at this at the lighter color up top here. Okay. So now the next move will probably be, I mean, we could throw a stroke on right away that mimics this. Yeah, that's pretty damn close. Let's go maybe 15. Yeah, let's say 15 on that. And then it has an inner shadow. You can see right there, and right there. So let's throw that in. Inner shadow. You could probably just do normal and mess around with the opacity. Maybe do like 50, like 40%. Or if you wanted it to look a little bit more saturated and like in tune with this color, you could do overlay, or you could do not hard light, color burn maybe. Yeah, color burn will kind of get you more of like in the same hue as this color, but it'll be more or less saturated depending on how much the opacity is. So yeah, that's not bad. Maybe we can use color burn here. Okay. So we've got that inner shadow here. Let's go a little bit darker. And I'm just gonna mess with the size a little bit so it's just a little bit fuzzy. Basically, if you mess with size, it becomes more and more fuzzy, like that. I don't want it to be super crisp because I think if it's a little bit fuzzy, it'll sort of lend itself to more of like that bootleg style, you know? There we go. Okay. And then they just have a straight up drop shadow on there. And I think I'm gonna do the same thing there, just kind of make sure it's just a little bit fuzzy. And bring the opacity down to maybe 50. Okay, I mean, that pretty much gets us there, and it's a matter of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 effects. And you know, obviously then to do the P, we can just duplicate this, hold down Shift, flip it back over, all the effects are gonna stay the same. You got your P, blow it up, boom. And since it's a little bit bigger, you'll probably want to mess with the inner shadow again so that it's like, oh, turn. I don't like using, a lot of people use global light and keep it on, but I don't, because it doesn't make any sense in this case since they're directionally completely different, so the global light doesn't make sense, to me at least. So, yeah, I mean, that pretty much gets us to where we want to be. Right? I mean, so yeah, from here, I mean, just so you're not completely ripping this off, you know, mess with the color. This Ice Cream Man text, I mean, if you want to get into it, I wasn't planning on getting into this, but we might as well since we're here. This looks like Arial rounded. I don't even know if I have Arial. Oh yeah, I do, cool. Let's see if I'm right. It's really close, but I don't think that's what it is. But Arial, I mean, I've definitely seen Arial rounded used a ton. Let's just make it a little bit, is bold an option? Let's see. No, it's not. Just make it a little bit thicker. So we're just gonna add a stroke. That's basically like the poor man's way of making a bold font. Okay. So from here, we could use the warp text tool up here, create warp text, and it looks like they've got just like the rise effect. Yeah, they're just using rise, and then let's grab the two colors they're using for the gradient. A little dark red, light red here, and just throw a gradient on that. Basic, make sure the blend mode's at normal. For the angle, up and down is 90 degrees, left to right is 0. More often than not, you're just gonna, you know, be going between those two. Let's see if this gradient. I think my colors they're not like contrasting enough, so it's really hard to tell where the gradient is. So let's make this a little bit darker so we can see that. There has been something weird with my gradient tool lately though. It's like not working exactly the way it's supposed to, and I can't quite understand why. But yeah, the actually right now the problem also is that I have this stroke on it and it's only applying it to that center area. So what I'll probably do is just rasterize the type, or what would be smarter is if I convert to a smart object and then apply the gradient. Yeah, then it's thicker so we can see what the fuck is going on. There we go. Alright, reverse it. We've got our gradient, then we'll throw a stroke on it. Yep. And then we've also got the drop shadow. Pretty similar to what is going on here, so we can just leave that. Fucking global light. I hate global light. And what sucks is that once you start moving it around and global light is selected, you can't like turn it off without changing the drop shadow on your other text. It's super annoying. I wish Adobe didn't do that, but say that be. Shout out to Adobe right now. If you guys don't know about this and you're just getting into designing, or you have, I'm not sure if it applies to maybe people that only have subscriptions, like existing subscriptions right now, but you can get 2 months free because the fucking world is ending and everyone has coronavirus and it's fucking up people's income and their jobs. So Adobe is giving away 2 months for free. Don't quote me on like if it'll work for new members, because it might not, but like I said, if you have an existing subscription, you can get 2 months for free right now. I did it earlier this week and it worked. So anyways, that gets us in the ballpark there. I don't know exactly what font this is. It might be the fucking Dunkin' Donuts font, or it is Arial rounded and it's just they skewed it a bunch like this, so it's more narrow. That could be it actually, I don't know. But anyways, that basically gets you in the ballpark there. So that's example number one. What I'm gonna do for you guys is provide a link below to a file that is basically just a folder that you'll open up, and it has a bunch of essential bootleg fonts in it. This is a comment somebody made on the last bootleg video. They asked about fonts and like what the best fonts to use were, and so I basically put together a folder of, I think there's like 10 different fonts in there, along with the examples I use in this video and some other examples of how you can use those fonts and apply them to your bootleg design. So hopefully that'll be helpful for you guys. Moving on to this next example, this is Cooper, super classic font. You'll see this one going all the way back to like the 60s. It's really cool because it's a super versatile font. Like you'll see this used in 60s rock and roll vintage type vibes, but you'll also see it in hip hop graphics like all the time. So it's super versatile. I love it. It's a little bit more cartoony, so I definitely recommend, if you're doing something that's supposed to be a little bit, despite Biggie's face here, which is pretty serious, The overall vibe of this is more like light, cartoony. So that's definitely where Cooper is really useful. So let's use, Cooper Heavy here. I love that it says Biggie Small, by the way. That happens all the time in with bootleg shit. They'll have like something is misspelled, or like it'll have a nickname that's just like definitely not a nickname that the rapper had, but it'll just be like Mr. Cool Guy or whatever. Big Papa is legit though, obviously. So with this one, the first thing I'm noticing is that, so obviously the text at the top is arced, right? And the gradient follows the arc, which means that they probably applied the gradient manually, because I'll just show you, if you put a gradient on this, 90, let's down a little bit. So if you apply a gradient, man, I'm telling you, there's something fucked up with this gradient tool. This line should be like super defined right here, because I have the scale at 10. It's so fucked up. I'm confused about that. Reset to default. Is that gonna help? Let's see what that does. Sorry, I'm doing this live. No, man, it's still like doesn't. I mean, maybe that's a little better, but whatever. So let's reverse it so it looks like the example. So what I was saying is, if you want to arc this text now, the gradient is not going to follow the arc. It's just going to still go straight. Like, it completely disappears. So what I would recommend on this is just starting with the yellow that's up top, right? And then getting the arc down that we want. So we're going to use the warp text tool again, arc it up, use the vertical distortion a little bit. They've got the right side, it gets larger from left to right, so we can do that with the horizontal distortion tool. Okay, and so from here, we're just gonna mess around with sort of the positioning and the overall layout of the text. So I'm gonna hold down Shift so that the aspect ratio stays the same. So like or not the aspect ratio, sorry, the font size. If you don't hold down Shift, the aspect ratio stays the same, but it gets smaller or larger. So hold down Shift, and then we'll be able to like make it a little bit taller. And here we go. Let's bring the arc down a little bit. Still too much of an arc. And I'm gonna keep messing around with this, holding the Shift key, so we can get it closer to this example. I think I actually have way too much vertical distortion, or not vertical, horizontal. Horizontal distortion. Yeah. There we go. That's a little better. Still a little bit taller. I want these G's to be taller, so let's just like actually do this. There we go. That's what we need. Okay, and then arc a little bit less. There we go. So, what I was saying about the gradient now, I'm going to show you a way that you can apply a gradient that's a little bit more like DIY-esque. It basically just relies on your eye, but it's still going to you're still going to have flexibility in changing colors. The only bummer is that you're going to lose the ability to change this text with like the actual type tool. So, I mean, as long as you're heading in the right direction and you like duplicate this so you can go back to it later, it's fine. So we're just gonna rasterize, actually let's convert to a smart object. Convert your text to a smart object, then grab the brush tool over here and make sure it's the hardness is down to 0 so it's a nice soft brush. And then create a new layer over the smart object and create a clipping mask. So now we're basically just going to paint in the gradient and follow the arc of the text. So, I mean, you can see how simple that was, and you know, it'll allow you to, you know, you can brush in a little bit more if you need to, and then if you decide, you know, later on to change the color, you know, it's just this simple. So you still have some flexibility with this, it's gonna allow you to get around that issue with the gradient, you know, not following the arc. So that's just a little trick that I would do there. And then let's group these two layers together, our gradient layer and our text layer, and then we'll be able to add a little stroke around the outside of black like they have in the example. Let's go 10, that'll work. And then we're going to duplicate this group so we can create this blue shadow. Turn off the stroke on the shadow layer. Let's get our blend mode to normal. Get this blue color. And then I'm just going to kind of nudge it down with the move tool and the arrow keys. Just nudge it. Actually, I think theirs just goes straight down. Yeah. Okay. And actually, in their example, it looks like the shadow layer has the stroke, so we just add that back. Actually, I don't know if it does. Now that I'm looking at it again, I don't think it does. Sorry about that. False alarm. So, you know, that's basically how you get this sort of style. Like I said, if you're gonna use Cooper, like, it's gonna be hard to do, you know, a fucking like NWO style shirt, or like, you know, Onyx with like Cooper. It's just gonna look kind of like goofy and cartoony. So, you know, do whatever you want, but I'm just saying, if the impression you're trying to give people is like, you know, super like badass, you know, rapper, whatever, like, Cooper's not the move at all. So yeah, so this is the second example. I'm gonna provide Cooper for you guys in that folder, so you'll have that to work with. And all of the fonts that I'm providing are readily available out there. They've been around forever. I'm not really too worried about getting sued or anything. That being said, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm telling you, if you are going to use these fonts, do your due diligence and make sure they're commercial free. To my knowledge, they are. Everything I'm providing is commercial free. I've used it. I've used all the fonts many times, and there's been no issues. So, yeah, y'all should be fine. Moving right along. So, I wanted to do an example that had a photo inlay, and so I found this example that uses, you know, this is probably just like Arial that's been skewed and like stretched, and in the middle here they've got Mistral, which we're going to do an example using Mistral later, so we're not going to worry about the little versus text for now. But I'm going to show you how to inlay a photo in the text. So let's start out with just using black text, and just use Arial. Arial, I don't use it super often just because, like, it feels a little too easy, like, you know, and I don't even know if this is Arial, to be honest. It's a little, now that I'm looking at it, it's a little too bold to be Arial. It might be like Futura. Yeah, that's actually probably what it is. My bad. So, yeah, and then you can just like stretch it a little bit because theirs is not quite so narrow. And then we're gonna adjust the kerning. Let's go to 25, even more. Let's go to 50. Yeah, kerning is the space between letters. So if you ever hear me say anything about kerning, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, so we've got our text here. Let's just add this yellow stroke that they've got going here. Let's get it a little bit more. Zoom in so I can see what the fuck. Alright. Yeah, that'll work. So, we got that. And now let's pop a photo in here. So, I just went and grabbed, like, literally a photo from the Tyson Holyfield fight. It's not, I don't think, the exact photo they used here, but whatever. So, you can create a clipping mask over your text, and boom, it's laid in there. So let's just make it a little bit bigger so that it covers like a lot of ground, right? And so another thing about inlaying photos in text, try to position it so that the person viewing you know, the graphic can kind of like see what's going on. Otherwise, there's no point in putting a photo in your text if it's just gonna look like a big fucking mess that nobody can really even see what it is. So, like for example, I want Tyson's face to kind of be showing here, and I want you to see Evander. Y'all remember this fight, by the way? This shit was crazy. Is this the time when he like bit his ear off and shit? Tyson has come a long way. Now he's like super chill. He's a fucking madman back in the day. Okay, so that's not bad. So they have theirs is like blue, right? So what I would do is first make this a smart object, which I really should have done from the beginning, but whatever, it's fine. You can see like the resolution is still, it's not amazing, but it's good enough for sure. So I made this a smart object, and then I'm going to do Command U to bring up the hue and saturation window. I'm going to take the saturation all the way down to -100, so it's basically just grayscale. And from there, just so we have like a more like purely black and white values, I'm going to go to adjustments and levels and just sort of play around with the levels so that we get a little bit more black and white and less like gray in there, because if there's a bunch of gray when we color overlay on the photo, we're not going to get the results that we want, basically. So just get a little bit more black and white to this. Not too much, because we still want people to see some of the details. That's pretty good. So now I'm just going to double click on that same layer and do a color overlay with this bright blue color. And I think multiply is not bad. You could probably get away with that. If we do overlay, you're gonna see more whites come through, and I am seeing some whites in the original, so that's probably what we're gonna want to use. And then from here, I like to mess around a little bit more with the color, just to get it exactly how we want it. That's pretty dope. And then, what else are we seeing in this? It looks like maybe there's a little inner stroke, like it's really tiny around the outside. And so we should be able to just lay that in there like this. Oh, whoops, that's the photo, my bad. So there's already a stroke, an outer stroke. So one thing that might work is just doing an inner glow, but bringing the choke all the way up to 100, because that's basically an inner stroke, you know? So that's like a kind of quick little way to do that. Yeah, and I'm gonna actually bring the opacity down, because I think in theirs it's just like a faint. It might just be like because that's how it printed, you know, actually, but yeah, I'm trying to think if that's the move. I mean, that doesn't look bad at all, but if we want it to sort of look like it's a mistake by the printer, or like, you know, it's just a little bit off, you could probably just do an inner shadow instead and bring the blend mode all the way up to normal, bring the size down, and just mess with the distance. So there's just a little, you see this little black line there? Yeah, so it's just like a little bit off. And that actually adds like, yeah, that's the move for sure. That adds like a little bit of dimension to it also, and definitely creates more of like a bootleg vibe. So from here, so like they have this Tyson text, right? And they did the exact same thing. So if we just group this and bring it down, obviously like you would just go through the same, I mean, we can just do it really quick. Why the fuck not, man? That's why we're here, right? So Tyson, and then I'm just gonna hold down shift and make it wider. If you don't hold down shift, like I mentioned before, this is what happens. You maintain the same aspect ratio, but it makes it bigger. So if you hold down shift, the font size will technically stay the same, but you'll be able to just make it wider. So then we would just go up to the photo, and obviously we would use a different photo, and then we'd grab this red color, just kind of mess around with it the same way. We've still got all our effects from the other text going. And then, like, you know, I mean, if we wanted to use this, we could probably just show like more of a Vander in this one. That's kind of a cool move, you know, and then to make it like bigger, so it's like almost like it's a totally different photo. Yeah, in reality I would use a different photo for sure, but like just for the sake of this, yeah, man, that looks dope. So what else could we do? I mean, from here, maybe like if we group these two together, we could throw like a drop shadow on it. If it was, let's just say, you know, if it was on top of another photo, see this drop shadow there? Yeah, maybe like 50. With drop shadows, you know, for some reason, I just always feel like 50, 40, 25 are just like the move, like more than half of the time. So yeah, that's how you basically could inlay a photo and make it look sort of like this bootleg style. I'm not going to provide Futura in the folder because they're meant to be more of like unique bootleg fonts, and like Futura is pretty readily available to anyone out there, so just like Google it, or more often than not you'll just already have Futura on your computer. So that is example number 3. Moving right along, Mistral, baby. I'm gonna show you guys that you all are familiar with Mistral already, because Mistral is straight out of Compton. Yep. So basically the holy trinity of bootleg fonts, in my opinion, is Army, Mistral, and Review, which we're gonna do after this one. Mistral is used so often, it's insane. Like, it's also super useful for like 80s, like new wavy, like digital, like futuristic looking shit. Like, I think it's the Drive font. Yeah, like if you've seen the movie Drive, boom, that's the font they used. So yeah, Mistral is like kind of the god OG of bootleg fonts. So in this, they basically have maybe 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 at best effects going. And just due to the angle of like this photo, that's why it looks like all stretched. I think it's probably like laying on a table or something. So we're not gonna really worry about that, but I am gonna make it a little bit wider, holding down the shift key. So the first thing I'm gonna do is add this gradient. So you can see that it goes from darker red to lighter red, but I'm actually gonna use black instead of the darker red, because then if we want to change the color of the font later, the black will just adapt to the color, right? So we won't have to like mess around with it. So to do that, I'm just going to double click on our text, gradient overlay, normal, go to basics, and then click this one that's black and transparent. And so you'll have to make sure that you have black over here in your little swatch. And then we're just going to bump it up, reverse it so it's on the bottom, bring the scale up, and then bring the opacity down. And actually, instead of normal, we could probably use like, that overlay is going to be too bright. We want it to be a little bit darker. Soft light, hard light? We want it to be a little bit saturated. You just gotta mess around with this stuff, man. Like, hey, that's the move. Linear burn. Yeah, dude. That's the shit we need. Okay. So we've got our linear burn. Scale it a little bit more. Okay. So now we've got our gradient in there, and like I mentioned, now if we decide later, we want to make it green, for example, boom, gradient still working for us. We don't have to mess around with that. So the next thing I'm seeing is there's a tiny stroker on the outside of black. So let's add that in there. We can probably go to like 5, change it to black, make sure the color, or yeah, the fill type is color, not gradient, not pattern. And that's good from there. And then we're going to group this so that we can add another stroker on the outside of white. And let's just go, let's call it 15, see what that looks like. Yeah, that's probably pretty good. And then there is a inner shadow. So with this one, it looks pretty crisp. So unlike that, whatever example that was earlier, I'm not going to mess with size, I'm just going to mess with distance. And color burn actually is kind of working for us right now, so let's just stick with that as the blend mode. But let's get the inner shadow, just like the example is here, right? So I'm just moving it around with the arrow. Yeah, that's pretty good. And 28, let's go to 25. Sure. Okay, so I mean, honestly, like that pretty much gets us to where we need to be. Oops. So that's cool. And the one thing I'm noticing about this example is they're using the exact same effects on this Woods text. It's just a different font. So I think the font they're using down here is Merit. So let's right away change this to green. Grab this green color here. A little more green, yeah. Okay, and then we'll switch it up to Merit. And Merit is a font I'm going to provide in that folder. Change this text to Woods. Make it a little bit more narrow, holding down the shift key. bro, when I was in college, I had a professor, an art graphic design professor, who literally was like, you can't skew fonts, you can't change fonts at all, you have to leave them how they are, that's how they're meant to be. And I remember at the time just thinking like, yo, you're an art teacher and you're telling us not to mess with like a font like at all? Like, are you insane? Anyways, so let's move this gradient up a bit here. Bro, I'm gonna lose my mind with this gradient shit. It like doesn't work sometimes. It's so weird. I love y'all at Adobe, but like this shit is wild. I guess it could just be me, but I don't know. So let's try to, I guess I'll just reset to default and see if that fixes it. So annoying, bro. This is not the default, by the way. Reflected is not the default. So there's definitely something fucked up. Anyways, sorry guys. Alright, and then, yeah, I think we're using linear burn, right? Just down, yeah. And if you guys see something that I'm not, and you like know Photoshop, and you see why the gradient is not working like it's supposed to, at this point, fucking let me know, because it's driving me insane. But, yeah, that's pretty good. Although, I don't think linear burn is the move down here. Up here it works because this is more, it's closer to black than it is to red, but this is closer to green than it is to black. So let's see what overlay does. That's definitely closer to what we need. I mean, shit. Or we could just get real basic and just like grab the two colors that they're using here. It's cool too, I guess. Reverse it. Yeah, whatever, we'll just do that. So now we have the same effect going on both fonts here, so that's kind of cool. And honestly, like, I see this happen all the time where like shirts will just use the exact same effect, and I think it's really cool. It's really like, it's just like, it makes everything more consistent, and I think overall, like, just aesthetically makes it more pleasing, because I don't know if it's like a psychological thing where, you know, it's just like you're creating sort of a familiar feel. I don't know, you know, does that make sense? Like, your eye is just seeing two things that are similar but different. It's real like deep design shit that's probably just not true at all, but whatever. So here's this example. Like I said, I'm gonna provide Merit and Mistral in that folder for you guys, so you can be able to work with those. And let's move on to the last example, review. So if you watch that Snoop video, I use this font in that, and this is part of the Holy Trinity, man. Review, Army, Mistral. You could do bootleg shirts for days and just use those two fonts in different ways, and you know, they'll all look super dope. So let's mess with the kerning first. It's a lot closer together in the example. I fucking love this shirt, by the way. Anytime review is used, like, it's a banger, like, every time. If you're looking for hits, use review. Just keep messing with this kerning, because a lot of times with these fonts, like, even if you use 0, it's, I don't know, it's like there's space there, there's not, I don't know, it just doesn't look good to me. So that's pretty damn close. Pretty damn close. So they've just got a little tiny arc, so we'll just be able to use the warp text tool. Let's arc it up a little there. All right. It looks like they then made it a little bit taller, right? Because that looks, so let's just hold down shift, bring it down a bit. And then we're gonna use the same technique as I used on that Snoop shirt in my other bootleg video. And then I just duplicated that really quick so we can make the shadow layer under it blue. And then I'm just gonna bump it over because we're gonna create one of those like long shadows connecting all the letters. So this is our shadow layer. And then we're gonna add another layer on top of that. And that's basically where we're gonna connect all the letters together. I'm just gonna like cruise through here quickly for you guys so I can get you out of here because I see we're already coming up like after 40 minutes. So, although y'all might like the 40-minute videos because that bootleg video popped the fuck off. I was so surprised by that. Like, literally, like my next most popular video was like 100 views or something, and then that one has like 1,300. It's fucking crazy shit. So I'm just connecting all these letters here, and that's gonna create like this longer kind of shadow effect. I wish, you know, someone out there would create like an action or something that would make this faster, so I didn't have to manually do this, but it is what it is. And you know, this is just to my knowledge the only way to get this effect. Like, I know obviously like if you were in Illustrator you'd use like a 3D effect on it, but it's not gonna be the same. Okay, let's see if we got everything connected. I think we're good. So then, I'm just gonna fill that in. Edit. Fill. Use that blue. And boom, we've got our long shadow. I think I actually missed a part though. Connect somewhere down there, whatever. Oh, yeah, I guess it doesn't matter. That was a dumb thing. Okay, so there we've got it looking just like the example, right? So from here, like you can see there's little lines here that it looks like just due to like the shirt being vintage have been kind of maybe rubbed away a bit. So the way to do that would be if you throw like a small stroke around the outside of the top layer text, maybe like 10, 5, 5, 10, 8, let's just go 15, fuck it. So, no, let's not go 15, fuck it, sorry. Let's go 5, okay, yeah. So, if you want these little lines, you kind of have to do like the same thing of like just manually drawing them in. So you basically just go down to your shadow layer and just start drawing lines in and make sure it's the same pixel width as the stroke. So it's like, it's for continuity. And then just start like connecting shit like this. And this is basically just gonna add like another dimension to it. This, I mean, really like only works on dark colored shirts. There's a way to do it for light colored shirts, but it's not gonna look as good. Like, so I would just, if you're gonna use this technique, just stick to dark colors. But see, that adds like another sort of dimension to it. And so yeah, you would just go ahead and do that for all of your, if you're gonna do it for one, you're gonna do it for all the other techs too that you do. So that's a pretty simple way to do that. You know, this is just like a rise effect there. This is, you know, kind of a wavy effect, and all pretty simple. Once you have like these techniques down, you can just kind of go nuts and make a bunch of cool shit. So hopefully this was helpful to you guys. That pretty much wraps it up. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's a new subscriber, everyone that watched that bootleg video. Like I said, it really just like gave me some insight into like who the audience is, who is watching these videos. And I'm not gonna be like the bootleg guy, but I am gonna really try to rack my brain and think of all the different videos I could potentially do that have to do with bootleg stuff, and just kind of sprinkle it in there with other you know, tutorials that are going to be useful to you guys. So stick around. Like it's this channel is not just going to be all bootleg stuff, but any other technique. Like I have a video on applying textures that would be super useful for bootleg stuff. Like I have a video that's designing for retail, and the bootleg style is a retail style design. So everything sort of comes together. So do yourself a favor, go watch some of those other videos. It's gonna be super useful to you moving forward. So thank you guys again. It really means so much that you're here and you're watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe, hit the bell so that you know whenever I upload new videos. I'm trying to do them whenever I get an idea. The comments are super crucial, because this video in itself was spawned from the comment section. Like someone left a comment about bootleg fonts, and I was like, man, I could just do a whole video showing how to do this stuff. So that's how that goes. So thank you guys very much. Follow me on Instagram. It's fuller.mo. I've been uploading a bunch of t-shirts that I've done over the last year or two. The problem right now that I'm facing is I have so many dope projects going, but they're all like pending or they're top secret, so I can't post them. But I'm doing my best to just get some stuff, get some new content on there for you guys. But most importantly, stick around on this YouTube channel. There's going to be a bunch of other cool shit going down. So thank you. That is it for today. Peace.